After 25 years of marriage, Clint Hawkins had planned a surprise trip to Italy for his wife Rose. But he hadn't the faintest clue that his life was about to take a wild spin. As president of Western Financial Services, Clint had built a comfortable life for his family. The company traced its roots back to his great-grandfather. Now Clint carried on the family tradition of business and civic engagement. "Good evening, dear," Clint said with a smile as he entered the kitchen. Rose looked up from the kitchen table, her expression flat. "Hi. I thought you'd be here earlier. What's that big red envelope? Don't you remember Valentine's Day was a week ago?" "I had a very important errand to run," Clint replied, placing his briefcase and the envelope on the coffee table. "The envelope is something that needs to be done tonight." He joined Rose at the table, where she had already poured 2 glasses of red wine. As he sat down, he noticed a pen and paper in front of her glass. "How was your day?" Rose asked, though her tone suggested she wasn't particularly interested in the answer. "My day went fine," Clint said cautiously, eyeing the list. "But judging by what's in front of you, my evening will be more important than my day." Rose sighed. "Yes, that may be so. I've been doing some introspection to see where I stand in life. And more importantly, what I am going to do in the second half of my life." She went on to explain how recent events had pushed her to this realization, hosting her sorority's 25th reunion, 2 classmates passing away from cancer, their children leaving home. "And that brings me to our marriage," Rose said, looking Clint in the eye. "This June will be our 25th wedding anniversary. That's a very long time for 2 people to be together. Half of my sorority sisters already have second or third husbands. Where do you and I go from here? What's holding us together? And more importantly, what will keep us together for the next 25 years? Clint listened intently, his mind racing. "I understand what you're getting at," he began carefully. "I have the same concerns about my own life. Some men fall into the middle-aged crazy category, buying Corvettes, wearing gold chains, and chasing young waitresses. Fortunately, I have a wonderful wife and have not contracted this disease. What can I do to make the next half of our lives interesting and worth waking up to every morning?" "That's exactly why I love you, Clint," Rose replied. "Most men ignore their wife's problems. They say, it's your problem, only you can solve it. Here's my solution. I've always lived under someone else's roof. I grew up in my father's house, then in college I transferred to a sorority. A month after I left the sorority house, I came here to live under your roof. Under the roof of the house your grandparents gave you for our wedding, I've always been sheltered by someone. I was never alone, never." She continued, her voice growing more passionate. "Living with you has been fun, but lately it hasn't always been fulfilling. I'm the wife of the president of the Chamber of Commerce, the wife of a church board member, the wife of the president of the country club. Wife of this, wife of that, wife of everything. No fame, just a leader's wife. Clint, you're the sun, and I'm just one of the many little moons orbiting around you. I need to get out of this orbit or I'll go crazy." Rose took a deep breath. "I have to leave. With that thought in mind, I want to take a time out, a hall pass, a freedom frenzy, or whatever you want to call it, for 6 months. For the next 6 months I'm going to live somewhere else and have no contact with you. It's going to be hard on both of us, as every hour I'll be wondering what you're doing. At the end of the 6 months, I'll come back to you, and we can make a plan for the rest of our lives." Clint stared at her in disbelief. "No contact? I realize I need to give you some space, but banning contact seems drastic. Our lives are so intertwined that it would be difficult to separate them. Tell me exactly how that would work." "It would be as if we weren't married," Rose explained. "You and I would go our separate ways. We would have our own interests, hobbies, and experiences." She went on to describe her plans for self-discovery and empowerment, taking courses on feminism, exploring new perspectives. "Our separation is like a divorce, only without the hate and mistrust for each other. We'll be like lovers separated for 6 months. Military couples do that all the time and get along just fine." As the reality of what Rose was proposing sank in, Clint felt a cold dread settle in his stomach. "You said you will act like a single woman and socialize with interesting people. Will that include dating other men?" Rose smiled. Probably, but probably no one will want to take me out to dinner and a movie. As a single woman who probably goes on dates, are you also probably going to do that on these dates? Clint asked, his voice tight. Probably, Rose replied casually. How else can I maximize my experience as a woman? My only experience is with you. I want to be on the same level as you. Clint's face darkened. You're forgetting one little factor. We're married. I vowed that all my future experiences would be with you alone. You made the same vow. I have remained faithful to you, and I expect you to do the same. Well, we'll see what happens in the next 6 months, Rose said dismissively. We will make that decision at the end of my vacation. Then there may not be an opportunity to bring you back into my life, Clint countered. You can just go on living with someone else, not me. Oh, don't be so dramatic, Rose scoffed. It's just sex. Nothing special. After 6 months without it with me, you'll be happy we're back together. Please don't make a big deal out of it. I'm striving to better myself, and the confidence I'll gain from seducing other men will make me a better lover with you and a more fulfilled woman in all other aspects. Clint felt like he'd been punched in the gut. This 6-month period of no contact with me seems extreme. Maybe we can solve some of your problems with counseling for both of us? But Rose was adamant. I don't want to just talk about it. I want to do it. It has to be cold turkey, or I will continue to rely on you for everything, and I won't be able to improve myself. It has to be as if we're no longer married, so I feel free enough to come back into our marriage with a better attitude. I don't know if I can handle that, Clint said quietly. No, Clint, we need a full reconstruction of my brain as soon as possible, Rose insisted. We'll stress for 6 months and not let this drag on for a year or 2. Let it happen sooner rather than later, until we get back to where we want to be as a couple. When do you plan to move out of our house? Clint asked, his voice hollow. I've rented an apartment for 6 months and we'll start moving things there this weekend, Rose replied matter-of-factly. Clint felt like the floor was dropping out from under him. I was all he could manage. Finally, he whispered, can we talk about this some more before we make such an important change in our lives? Rose took his hand. Thank you so much for talking to me about this. I think it will make our lives better in the long run. I love you so much for being understanding and for not being a jerk or a bully. Clint pulled his hand away. You trust me too much. I don't understand why you're doing this, and I really don't approve of it. It looks like it's going to happen whether I give my consent or not. My feelings are not factored into this decision. He stood up abruptly. My head is spinning with your plan. I just don't know what to ask or what to talk about. My brain is on overload. How about we go to bed and discuss it tomorrow night? Will you join me in bed or has the separation already begun? Not now, dear, Rose replied. I want to work on the logistics of my move. But I expect to be in bed with you tonight. Clint climbed the stairs to the bedroom and fell into bed, utterly exhausted. But sleep eluded him as questions and doubts swirled in his mind. Later that night, Rose slipped into bed and snuggled against his back, gently kissing his shoulder. He felt her tears as she whispered, I'm so sorry, Clint. I'm sorry too, Rose, he replied quietly. I love you, she said. Is that the last time I hear that from you? He asked. I want our lives to be better, not worse, after my adventure, Rose whispered. I plan to come back to you a much better wife and lover. The next morning, Clint woke early and left the house without their usual routine of bringing Rose coffee in bed. He texted his friend Roger from the car dealership, needing practical advice on how to handle this situation. After explaining Rose's plan to Roger, his friend looked at him gravely. It sounds like she already has a boyfriend, but she's not ready to commit to this relationship. She wants to experience it before she leaves you. If she's happy with her boyfriend in 6 months, she'll dump you. If he turns out to be unworthy of her time, she will come back to you saying, I am rejuvenated and ready to be your loving wife again. You are the base she can use to improve her situation with her lover with minimal risk to herself. How do I protect myself from being used like that? Clint asked. Dump the bitch and the sooner the better, Roger exclaimed. Put yourself in the driver's seat. You have to make the decisions. The day she moves out, you're going to file for divorce on the grounds that she left you. The divorce will take about 6 months either way, so if she leaves you, the divorce will be ready to be finalized. If you decide to get her back, however, you will simply refuse to sign the final document and stay married. The important thing is that you decide what you want to do with her, not her deciding what she should do with you. Roger continued, remember, if she cheats and you let her come back to you, it will be easier for her to cheat again and again. One more piece of advice for you. Stay the good guy you are. Don't be an asshole and don't yell at her. That will only put up barriers that will hurt you in the future, both in the relationship and in court. Act like you understand and are complicit in her plans. As Clint left the dealership, he noticed a black BMW 430i convertible in the lot. On impulse, he decided to buy it. I'll probably do more this year than I did this year, he told Roger. When Clint returned home that evening, Rose was waiting for him. Clint, honey, where are you? She called out anxiously. I missed you so much this morning. Can you talk now? I have a lot on my mind after our conversation yesterday, Clint replied evenly. I thought a car ride would help. I can take the day off and talk now if you want, Rose offered. I know I shook you to your core last night, and I'm worried about my wonderful husband. Tell me what you want to do. Meet now, over lunch, over dinner, after dinner. I need you to be with me as I am afraid of what I think I want to do. I need your wisdom. Please, Clint. Clint felt a flicker of resentment at her sudden concern. I need more time to digest the implications of your divorce plans, he said quietly. I'll go to the office, close the door, turn off the phone, and contemplate the future. Let's make plans to have dinner together tonight, at the usual time, and discuss it further. I'll stop and get something to eat so you don't have to cook or clean up the kitchen. Is that okay with you? Rose agreed eagerly. As they sat down to dinner that evening, the tension between them was palpable. Clint listened as Rose outlined her plans for the apartment and her upcoming courses. When she asked if she could borrow furniture from their home, he agreed woodenly. Thank you for being so considerate, Rose said, smiling. You really are a wonderful person. Clint bit back a sarcastic retort. Instead, he simply said, I don't think you can fit all your stuff into a 1,200 square foot apartment. What are you going to do with the extra stuff? When Rose suggested leaving some things at the house, Clint shook his head firmly. If you leave, all of you will leave. You can't have that as a base when you're starting a new life. As the reality of the logistics sank in, Rose's enthusiasm began to waver. You can be so thoughtful about providing me with a bed, yet be such a jerk about my unnecessary stuff, she snapped. A real jerk. What can I do with my stuff except leave it here? Since you want to be independent, why are you asking me? Clint replied coldly. You're leaving me for that reason, but now you need my help. You can rent a warehouse. They have them all over the city. The conversation devolved into bickering over practical details. Finally, Clint laid out his position. Look, Rose, after our first conversation on this subject, I did some digging on myself. As long as I don't have my wife around, maybe I should think about whether I should trade her in for someone else. Rose's eyes widened. Swap? What does that mean? Just like if your car gets old and stops working, you swap it out for a newer model, Clint explained. I would also like to trade my wife for a younger and more interesting wife, not an old one. Look, Buster, Rose growled, I'm doing this to improve my womanhood for you. You don't need to go out looking for a new wife. I don't like that idea at all. And I don't like your idea either, Clint shot back, but you told me I had no say in your decision. You were going to do it regardless of what I said. You didn't consider my feelings about having a cheating wife. So while you're going to do what you want, I'm going to do what I want for 6 months. Let's see where this ends. The argument escalated until Rose stormed out of the house. Clint was left alone with his thoughts, the red envelope containing plans for their Paris trip still sitting unopened on the coffee table. Over the next few weeks, Clint threw himself into work and began exploring his newfound freedom. He redecorated the house, replacing family photos with sports memorabilia. He started grilling steaks on the patio and blasting jazz music through the house, all things Rose had never allowed. Meanwhile, Rose settled into her new apartment and began attending feminist theory classes. But her excitement about her adventure was tempered by the growing distance from her children, who were struggling to understand her decision. As the weeks turned into months, both Clint and Rose found themselves navigating unfamiliar territory. Clint reluctantly attended court-mandated marriage counseling sessions, where the therapist probed their reasons for separating. Rose insisted she just wanted to find herself, while Clint maintained that her desire to be with other men was a deal-breaker. Clint began spending time with two women, Tara, a beautiful young widow with a son, and Greta, a former pro golfer turned insurance agent. Though he enjoyed their company, he held firm to his vow not to be intimate with anyone until his marriage was legally dissolved. Rose, meanwhile, threw herself into the single scene with gusto. She went clubbing with divorced friends and reveled in the attention from men. But a fateful encounter in Dallas with a handsome stranger named Ted would have far-reaching consequences she couldn't have imagined. As the 6-month mark approached, tensions rose. Rose grew increasingly confident that Clint would welcome her back with open arms. But Clint had been forever changed by her betrayal. When their children discovered photographic evidence of Rose's infidelity, the final nail was driven into the coffin of their marriage. On the day of reckoning, Clint and Rose met at the lawyer's office to determine the fate of their marriage. Rose arrived first, dressed in a new outfit and brimming with confidence that they would reconcile. Clint entered last, placing a bright red envelope on the desk. "I'm sorry I'm late," he said quietly. The lawyers exchanged pleasantries and paperwork. Both Clint and Rose signed the final divorce decree, as agreed. Then Clint turned to Rose. "Do you have anything you'd like to say?" he asked. Rose took a deep breath. "It's been a long 6 months without the love of my life being with me, but with any adversity comes the ability to improve. These improvements are reflected in the fact that I am once again a more enlightened woman who is even more committed to our marriage than before. I would like to thank my loving and dedicated husband for giving me the opportunity to spread my wings and learn to fly. Clint, you will never regret the gift you have given me, for I will demonstrate my faithful love for you for the rest of the days of my life." Clint listened impassively. When she finished, he spoke. "Faith is trusting someone. All marriage vows speak of the faithfulness of both parties, because without trust there is no love. That brings us to the initiation of this divorce petition, and my desire that my wife and I remain faithful to each other. Over the past 6 months, I have spent time with several women. I have had no physical contact with anyone during that time." He paused, looking Rose in the eye. "Rose, have you remained faithful to me?" Rose blinked, taken aback by his formal tone. "Yes, I have remained faithful to you." Clint's face tightened. He reached for the red envelope and pulled out a photograph. It showed Rose kissing Ted in the Dallas nightclub. "Have you been faithful?" he asked again, his voice hard. Rose stammered, her face flushing. "It was just a kiss. It didn't mean anything. I wasn't unfaithful." Clint pulled out another, more explicit photo. Rose gasped. "Where did you get this?" She cried. "Were you following me?" "This is the most disgusting situation I have ever been in," Clint said, his voice shaking with anger. "This picture was taken by a friend of one of our sons in Dallas. Our son found out about the picture when Matt and his father were laughing at the woman who jumped Ted at the club. They confirmed it was you." The color drained from Rose's face as the full impact of her actions hit her. Tears sprang to her eyes. Clint continued, his voice rising. "Imagine the pain of a son seeing his mother in a crowded club as she tried to pick up some guy to entertain her. Our son sat across the table from the man who made his father a cuckold and his mother a whore. Imagine what was going through his head looking at that disgusting picture. And you wonder why the kids don't return your calls." He turned to his attorney and handed him both signed copies of the divorce decree. "Please file them," he said firmly. "Clint, the sex meant nothing to me," Rose pleaded. "It meant nothing to Ted. It was just a physical activity. No love, no commitment." "That's even more cruel, Rose," Clint said, his voice cold. "You think it with Ted means nothing to you while you know it means the world to me. How disrespectful that is to me. That's the worst thing you could say to me." Rose collapsed into tears, moaning and mumbling incoherently. "No, No, no, she sobbed. I want to be your wife again. Please forgive me. I promise to be faithful always. Please don't do this to me. I don't want to be divorced like the other women in the clubs. Please don't push me away. I'm sorry. I'll never do this again. But Clint was already walking out the door, her cries fading behind him as he strode to his BMW. He spent the rest of the day at home, nursing a glass of whiskey and smoking a cigar on the patio. As night fell, he ignored the constant buzzing of his phone, Rose calling every few minutes, interspersed with concerned messages from Tara, Greta, and his children. The next morning, Clint awoke to find Tara gently shaking his shoulder. "Are you okay?" she asked, her face etched with concern. He managed a weak smile. "Yeah, but why wouldn't I be okay?" Tara laughed softly. "I see you haven't lost your sense of humor after the divorce." She sat down beside him, wrapping an arm around his shoulders. "Does that future include me?" "Absolutely," Clint replied without hesitation. Tara leaned in and kissed him tenderly. "As long as you have plans for me, I can wait," she said. "Don't be in a hurry or rush to do anything. You're feeling the last gasps of a 25-year relationship. It's not going to disappear quickly. I'll be there for you." As autumn arrived, bringing cooler temperatures and changing leaves, Clint slowly began to adjust to his new reality. He declined invitations to golf that weekend, needing time alone to process everything. On Saturday morning, Greta showed up at his door. "I heard it was brutal, but it's over," she said sympathetically. Clint nodded, inviting her in. They sat together on the couch, and Greta took a deep breath. "There's something I need to tell you," she began. "I wanted to tell you before, but you already had a lot on your mind, and I was having so much fun with you that I just couldn't bring myself to say it." Clint tensed, bracing himself for more bad news. "I'm already married," Greta said softly. "My wife lives in Atlanta. We've been married for 5 years. Clint, I'm a lesbian and have been for 10 years. Clint stared at her in shock. "What? When? How?" he sputtered. Greta explained further, emphasizing that her feelings for Clint were those of a deep friendship. "That doesn't change the fact that I love you as my best friend and want you in my life always," she said. "I can love you, but not marry you. As far as I'm concerned, we can continue to live the way we did this summer if Tara doesn't mind. In fact, I would like to improve my relationship with Tara. I want her to know that I'm not trying to steal her man." As the reality of Greta's revelation sank in, Clint felt an unexpected sense of relief. The pressure he'd felt to potentially choose between Tara and Greta evaporated. "Thank you for telling me," he said, squeezing Greta's hand. "You're right, you are my best friend. And I'm glad we can continue that friendship without any complications." In the weeks that followed, Clint focused on healing and moving forward. He spent time with both Tara and Greta, grateful for their support and companionship. His relationship with Tara deepened gradually, built on a foundation of mutual respect and understanding. Rose, meanwhile, struggled to adjust to her new circumstances. She was forced to move to a smaller apartment in a less desirable neighborhood, her finances strained by the unfavorable divorce settlement. Her attempts to reconnect with her children were met with hesitation and lingering hurt. As winter approached, Rose found herself facing long, lonely nights. She shivered, pulling her coat tighter around her as she walked home from her evening job. "This is going to be a long